So we've kind of got a windy, little bit of rain day in Anchorage, so I thought it'd be a good day to talk about solar. So we did a solar project on our boat last year and added 2,050 watts of solar on the back of the boat. We did that with an arch that we had custom built, and we've been pretty happy with our solar installation. And so I thought I'd just make a update video on how it's going and what I would do differently, if anything. All the questions that I had when I was looking into doing the solar project really revolved around, how much benefit am I going to get from X number of watts installed on the boat, and how often am I going to have to still charge my batteries with either my engines or my generator, whatever you have. These are all questions that have many variables, unfortunately. Usually the first part of how much solar do I need is usually how much solar do I have room for. I think most boats have a limited amount of room for solar naturally. You usually have to install something like an arch on the back of the boat to get a decent amount of solar on most boats. You can go with flexible panels and put them in various locations, but those are not as efficient, and people that have had those sometimes are not always happy with the output. I think fixed hard panels on an arch on the back of the boat are some of the most efficient use of real estate that you have for adding solar to your boat. I don't think it takes away from the aesthetics of the boat, and I just think it's the most practical way to do it, because not only do you get the most efficient panels that way, but you also eliminate all the shading issues, or not all, but a lot of the shading issues from the mainsail, because you've got the arch back behind the mainsail. You do still have some shading with the mast, but not as much as you'd have if you had the panels forward of the back of the boat. So that's my opinion. Put an arch on the back of the boat and figure out how many panels you can get on there. Obviously, catamaran, you can get more panels across than you can on a monohull. I personally think if I had a monohull, I would probably do panels and wind generation. I think with a catamaran, you can get enough panels across the back that you don't need wind generation. So once I mount these panels on the back of my boat, what other questions do I need answered? Well, type of batteries is a big one. If you have lead acid batteries, they're going to charge slower. Lithium can take more power quicker. They don't have to go through an absorption and float phase. So that's a question as far as how much actual power am I going to get into my batteries. The other thing to question is, how big does my battery bank need to be? Obviously, the sun does not shine every day, so there's going to be days when you're not going to fully charge your batteries with your solar, most likely. And so you'll need to have enough power to get through those days, which really brings up the question of, what kind of cruising are you going to do? We like to stay at anchor for long periods of time without having to run generators or engines. If that's your cruising style, then you definitely want to maximize the output from your solar, and so lithium batteries would be a good option. So I mounted these solar panels, or planning to mount these solar panels on the back of my boat. How much output am I going to get? Well, that's a great question. Obviously, all the solar panels come with ratings, but these are really just for comparison purposes. It really doesn't tell you how much power you're going to actually get, because guess what? There's clouds. I know it's a problem, but clouds are not solar's friend. Clouds cut down the solar output dramatically. So exactly how much solar output can I get from my solar panels? That's a question that I was trying to figure out when I was sizing our system, trying to figure out what we wanted. And so let's go through the data. This is data for 39 days down in the Bahamas, March and April. This is information that comes right off of the smart solar controllers that we have from Victron. And you can see that you get the total yield for the day, what the maximum watts were, for a moment, the maximum voltage for a moment, what the minimum battery voltage was for the day, and the maximum battery voltage, how much time the controller spent in bulk charge, absorption charge, and float. And then I have added a column over here which shows our generator run times for that day. And I've got our 5 panels. 2 of them are on starboard, 1 controller, 2 are on port on another controller, and we have 1 panel by itself in the center on its own controller. So combining the data for all of those, we end up with a total wattage yield for the each solar panel and the total for the day. And then I also have the generator hours on this page also. So you can see the total output varies quite a bit. Obviously, there's clouds, and it can vary significantly. You can see right here the low wattage output for the whole system was 440 watts. Very, very low. And then the top was 12,560, which is, impressive. And so you can see this is our total output, 279,000 watts for 39 days. The average per day was 7,178. And this is our average usage. This is a number that's hard to get at because it changes every day, depending on what you're running, things that are high users for us or our washing machine, our hot water heater, and, our refrigeration systems. So that's, what uses the bulk of our power, and depending on how many loads of laundry we do, or if we do laundry, drives that number up or down a fair amount every day. But our average replacement, you can see, is 116%. So we're actually generating more power with the solar than we need. But the low was only 72% of our needs for a day, and the high, of course, was 204.6%. And, what this is telling you is that it's highly variable. So on some days, or sometimes more than one day, you're going to have to be drawing down your battery bank, your house bank. Other days, the solar is going to top the batteries off before the day's over, and the system is going to go into float. You can see when you go back and look at the detail that there's a number of days when the panels, go into float mode. Float mode, they're barely generating any power whatsoever. Very small amount. And that's how you end up, or why you need to size the system for, maybe more than you actually use on an average basis, because just using a 12-hour day to keep it kind of simple, I have kind of max, if our panels put out the rated amount 12 hours a day, we get 24,000 watts for the day. And of course, our max was only 12,560. Well, that's clouds, that's the angle of the sun. You only get peak output when the sun is at its peak during the middle of the day without clouds. So overall, we got about 30% of the rated power. Now, I'm going to keep track of this number. I'm going to keep putting data into the spreadsheet, and over time, kind of see how it trends up or down off of that 30%. But that's, I think, a pretty good number, depending on where you're living. Obviously, if you're in northern latitudes in the winter, it's going to be much lower than this. And if you're down in the equator area, it could be much higher than this. But this is probably a good average for most people that are going to be going various places on their boat, 30%. So, and that was a number that I wanted when I was sizing our system. And it kind of takes you back to the idea that, it's good to put as much solar on the boat as you can afford or have room for. That makes sense. So how did this affect our generator runtime? Well, We used to have to run our generator about 6 hours a day. We did have a little bit of solar on the boat that was helping. We had 450 watts that was helping out a little bit, but on average, we usually had to run the generator about 6 hours a day just to keep our batteries up. And so that translated into these fuel usages, and this is what we look like we're saving. Um, we're saving about $512 for this time period, right, on diesel fuel, $5 a gallon. I just paid $6.95 for fuel in the Bahamas, so this ends up saving us quite a bit of money over time, $3,500 a year, easy at the $5 rate. And it could go up and down for here. And then this is carbon calculation I did on the burning of diesel. About 15,000, so almost 16,000 pounds of carbon, and that's on a 9-month usage, which is about right for our boat. So I'm going to attach the spreadsheet to this video in the comments, and feel free to peruse it and slice and dice the data how you want. Maybe you can use it to help you size your solar on your boat. So you can see having a good battery bank is still necessary, even if you have a lot of solar on the boat. Now, obviously, we can economize some on cloudy days. We could turn off our water heater. We can not wash clothes that day. We can not use the electric appliances for cooking. And so you can vary your usage some, but, if you just want to live your life on your boat and not worry about it so much, having a lot of solar and a large battery bank helps. We have 1,000 amp hours of lithium, which gives us about 800 amp hours of usable battery space. Typically, we don't come anywhere near using that because typically you don't have clouds day after day after day. I think the lowest that we've seen our battery bank is probably right around 50-60%. Using our solar and staying on the hook because, like I mentioned before, we have a generator. So every 3 to 5 days, typically, we will run our generator for 3 or 4 hours and we will make water. Our water maker is the one thing, and of course our air conditioners are the things that do not run off our batteries. We did actually add soft starts to 2 of our air conditioning units in the owner's hull, and we can run those off the batteries, but we usually don't. So given that we're going to run our generator every 3 or 4 days, it's not as critical how big our battery bank has to be because we're going to get an assist from the generator every couple days. Hopefully this data has been interesting, helpful. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them as best I can. I'm no expert, but I'm gaining experience with living our boat with solar power. And I'll go ahead and include the spreadsheet down below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this data. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and please like the video and comments. Let us know how we can improve or other topics you'd like to see us cover on our cruising catamaran. Have a great day.